You're the commander of the most advanced alien fleet in the galaxy. Your weapons can destroy entire star systems. Your technology is millions of years ahead of anything else in known space. You've conquered 1,000 worlds without breaking a sweat. But there's one small blue planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star that makes your entire crew freeze in terror. That planet is Earth. For centuries, the galactic community has whispered about us humans in hushed, frightened tones. Not because we're the strongest, not because we're the smartest. Hell, we can barely get along with each other, let alone pose. A threat to civilizations that mastered faster-than-light travel when our ancestors were still figuring out fire. Yet somehow, someway, we became the one species that every alien empire fears to even mention by name. The Zephyrian Council, rulers of 12 solar systems, maintain a military blockade around our entire sector. The crystalline Vorthak, beings of pure energy who've existed since the birth of galaxies, refuse to acknowledge Earth's existence in any official capacity. Even the machine collective known as the Nexus Prime, artificial intelligences with computational power beyond imagination, have protocols specifically designed to avoid any contact with human space. What could possibly make a species as primitive? Has ours so terrifying to beings who view us as nothing more than clever apes? The answer lies buried in our own forgotten history, in a weapon so devastating, so uniquely human, that we ourselves chose to erase it from memory rather than live with what we had done. You see, there was a time when humanity possessed something that shook the very foundations of galactic civilization, something that made alien empires tremble and caused entire species to flee to the furthest reaches of space. But here's the twisted irony. We don't even remember what it was. The trauma was so severe, the horror so complete, that our own minds locked away the truth to protect our sanity. Recently discovered alien archives tell a different story about Earth than the one we know. Ancient reports speak of a great war that ended not with victory or defeat, but with something far worse, something that made every witness swear never to speak of it again. These documents, hidden for millennia in the deepest vaults of alien civilizations, paint a picture of humanity that would make your blood run cold. Today we're going to uncover the truth about Earth's forgotten weapon. We're going to explore how a species barely out of its technological infancy became the galaxy's most feared nightmare. And by the end of this story, you'll understand why sometimes the most dangerous predator is the one that doesn't even know it's hunting. It all started 300 years ago, during what humans call the Great Silence. That mysterious 47-year period when Earth suddenly stopped all radio transmissions and seemed to vanish from galactic awareness. The Corvanian Empire, always hungry for new territories to exploit, had been monitoring our little blue world for decades. To them, we were nothing special, just another primitive species stumbling toward the stars, ripe for either conquest or slavery. Captain Vex Thurlow of the Corvanian Deep Space Reconnaissance Vessel was the first to make official contact. His mission logs, recently declassified after the Corvanian government fell, paint a picture of supreme confidence, mixed with casual contempt. They expected to find a world of frightened primitives, easy to intimidate and even easier to control. Instead, they found something that would haunt the captain for the rest of his unnaturally long life. The initial scans seemed to confirm their assumptions. Earth's technology was laughably primitive. We had barely figured out fusion power, and our fastest ships couldn't even reach our own moon in less than 3 days. Our weapons were crude projectile systems and basic energy cannons. By Corvanian standards, we were still playing with sticks and stones while they wielded the power of collapsed stars. But then something happened that changed everything. During a routine archaeological survey of Earth's abandoned cities, those mysterious ruins from our own Great Silence period, a Corvanian research team made a discovery that sent shockwaves through their entire empire. Hidden beneath the rubble of what was once New Geneva, they found a data vault containing records that should never have existed. The files were written in dozens of human languages, some of which no longer exist. They spoke of weapons that defied physics, of battles that broke the laws of reality itself, and of an enemy so terrifying that humanity chose collective amnesia rather than remember what they had fought against. More disturbing still, these weren't stories or legends. They were technical manuals, battle reports, and casualty lists with a level of detail that made even hardened Corvanian warriors sick to their stomachs. Dr. Zara Vorthis, the lead xenoarchaeologist, on the expedition, later testified before the Galactic Council that reading those files was like staring into the abyss of human potential. The documents described weapons that could turn entire populations against themselves, technologies that weaponized empathy itself, and battle tactics that relied on something the researchers could only describe as controlled insanity. What terrified the Corvanians most wasn't the power of these forgotten weapons, it was the casual way humans had written about using them. The reports read like maintenance logs, as if unleashing reality-bending horror was just another day at the office for our ancestors. There was no boasting, no glory-seeking, just cold, clinical documentation of how to break the universe and everyone in it. The weapon wasn't a device you could hold or a ship you could pilot. It wasn't some exotic technology powered by dark matter or quantum foam. The weapon was something far more insidious and infinitely more dangerous. It was humanity's ability to turn our greatest weakness into our most devastating strength. The alien researchers would later call it the Madness Protocol, though the human documents referred to it simply as going authentic. Here's what made it so terrifying. Every other species in the galaxy had evolved past their primal instincts. They had become logical, efficient, predictable. The Corvanians conquered through superior technology. The Zephyrians dominated through collective intelligence. The Vorthak transcended physical limitations through pure energy manipulation. But humans had never let go of the chaos that birthed us. When pushed beyond our breaking point, humans could voluntarily embrace a controlled form of psychological breakdown that turned us into something that defied every law of civilized warfare. We could convince ourselves that impossible things were possible, make our enemies believe their own eyes were lying to them, and fight with such apparent randomness that no computer could predict our next move. The ancient battle records describe human soldiers walking through impossible situations simply because they refused to acknowledge they should be dead. They tell of humans convincing entire alien armies to surrender by making them believe reality itself had turned against them. Most disturbing of all, they speak of humans who could make their enemies feel the full weight of human suffering. Every death in human history, every moment of loss and pain, transmitted directly into alien minds that had never experienced such raw, unfiltered emotion. Lieutenant Marcus Kowalski's final report from the Battle of Proxima Station provides the clearest example of how this weapon worked. Facing a Corvanian assault force that outnumbered his unit 50-1, Kowalski activated what the documents call a full-spectrum empathy burst. Within minutes, the attacking Corvanian warriors were weeping uncontrollably as they experienced every human death their empire had caused. They felt the grief of mothers who lost children, the rage of fathers watching their families die, the despair of entire civilizations facing extinction. The Corvanian force didn't just retreat, they fled the galaxy entirely, their surviving members reporting that they could still feel human pain decades later. The psychological weapon had permanently scarred them in ways that physical torture never could. But here's the truly horrifying part. It had changed Kowalski too. The report was his last communication before he voluntarily entered what humans called the forgetting chambers, facilities designed to erase memories too dangerous to carry. The galaxy had enjoyed over 2 centuries of peace from the human threat, believing that whatever had made Earth so dangerous had died during the Great Silence. The humans who emerged from that dark period seemed different, more peaceful, more focused on exploration than conquest. They built trade relationships, shared scientific discoveries, and appeared to have evolved beyond their violent past. The galactic community slowly began to relax their guard. That was their first mistake. The incident that changed everything happened at the Kepler 442 research station, a joint human-alien scientific facility studying exotic matter interactions. Dr. Amanda Rivera, a human physicist, had been working alongside Zephyrian researchers to develop new faster-than-light communication systems. The project was routine, the team was experienced, and nothing suggested that they were about to trigger the galaxy's worst nightmare. During a standard test of a quantum entanglement array, a massive feedback surge struck the station. The exotic matter containment failed catastrophically, releasing energies that should have vaporized everything within 100,000 miles. The Zephyrian crew prepared for death, their collective consciousness already mourning the loss of their physical forms. But death didn't come. Instead, something impossible happened. Dr. Rivera, faced with the complete annihilation of herself and her colleagues, simply refused to accept it. Security footage from the station, later analyzed by terrified alien investigators, shows her walking calmly through energy discharges that should have reduced her to subatomic particles. She moved with purpose, speaking softly to herself in what appeared to be a long-dead human language, her hands manipulating controls that had been melted beyond recognition. For 17 minutes, Amanda Rivera held back the destruction through nothing but pure, inexplicable human stubbornness. She convinced reality itself to bend around her will, making the impossible possible through sheer force of human determination. The exotic matter that should have consumed everything instead condensed into a stable configuration that defied every known law of physics. When the emergency was over, Dr. Rivera collapsed. But the damage was already done. Every alien who witnessed the event transmitted the same panicked message to their homeworlds. The humans remember. Within hours, 3 different alien civilizations began emergency evacuations of their colonies, nearest to human space. The Corvanian Empire recalled every ship to their core systems. The Zephyrian Council activated protocols that hadn't been used since the first human wars. The galaxy had just been reminded that humanity's most terrifying weapon had never really gone away. It had simply been sleeping, waiting for the right moment to wake up. The aftermath of the Kepler 442 incident sent shockwaves through every corner of galactic civilization. Within days, the Galactic Council convened its first emergency session in over 300 years. Representatives from 47 different species gathered to address what they now called the human problem, a designation that carried the same weight as discussing natural disasters or cosmic extinction events. Ambassador Thex Valdris of the Andromedian Alliance spoke for many when he declared that humanity had become an existential threat to ordered reality itself. The evidence was undeniable. Across the galaxy, reports were flooding in of humans, displaying impossible abilities during moments of extreme stress. A human trader on Rigel 7 had negotiated his way out of certain execution by somehow convincing his captors that killing him would cause them to forget their own names. A human engineer on the mining world Kepler 186b had prevented a volcanic eruption by talking to the planet itself, and the planet had apparently listened. The response was swift and absolute. The Treaty of Proxima, signed by every major galactic power, established a 5-light-year exclusion zone around Earth and all human colonies. No alien vessel was permitted to approach human space without explicit authorization from the Galactic Council, and that authorization was never to be granted, except in cases of immediate galaxy-wide emergency. But the isolation wasn't enough. The Nexus Prime, the galaxy's most advanced artificial intelligence collective, began developing what they called humanity protocols, specific algorithms designed to predict and counter human behavior in crisis situations. Their conclusion was terrifying. Human actions during extreme stress followed no logical pattern that could be computed. Humans didn't just think outside the box, they convinced themselves the box never existed in the first place. The economic consequences were equally severe. The Galactic Trade Federation implemented what became known as the human quarantine, cutting off all commercial relationships with Earth-based companies. Entire trade routes were rerouted to avoid even passing through human-claimed systems. The cost was enormous, trillions of credits in lost revenue, decades of scientific collaboration abandoned, and promising partnerships dissolved overnight. Perhaps most telling was the response of the Eternal Archives, the galaxy's repository of knowledge maintained by the ancient Keeper civilization. These beings, who had collected and preserved information for millions of years, made an unprecedented decision. They classified all detailed records of human capabilities at the highest security level. Access was restricted to only the most senior governmental officials, and even then readers were required to undergo psychological conditioning both before and after reviewing the files. The message was clear throughout the galaxy. Humanity was no longer viewed as a young species to be guided or a primitive civilization to be conquered. We had become something far more dangerous, an unpredictable force that could rewrite the rules of reality whenever we decided those rules were inconvenient. The alien research into human psychology that followed the Kepler 442 incident produced findings that disturbed even the most advanced minds in the galaxy. Dr. Keith Morvain, the Zephyrian Empire's leading expert on consciousness studies, spent decades analyzing human behavioral patterns and emerged from his research fundamentally changed. His final report, sealed in the deepest archives of Zephyrian High Command, contained a single chilling conclusion. Humans were the only known species that had never truly accepted the limitations of reality. Every other intelligent race in the HFY galaxy had evolved by learning to work within natural laws. They developed technology by understanding physics, created societies by accepting biological limitations, and explored space by respecting the constraints of distance and time. Humans, however, seemed to view these laws as suggestions rather than absolutes. When faced with impossibility, other species adapted their goals. Humans adapted reality itself. The psychological profile that emerged painted a picture of a species fundamentally different from anything else in the cosmos. Where other beings sought harmony and balance, humans thrived on controlled chaos. Where others found strength in unity and collective thought, humans found power in individualistic madness. Most disturbing of all, humans seemed to grow stronger as circumstances became more hopeless. Commander Yex Thorne of the Galactic Psychology Institute documented hundreds of cases where humans had performed impossible feats simply by refusing to believe they were impossible. A human mother had lifted a crashed transport vehicle off her child using nothing but adrenaline and absolute determination. A human artist had painted a portrait so emotionally powerful that alien observers experienced months of the subject's memories just by looking at it. A human child had befriended a creature from a parallel dimension by playing an imaginary game that somehow became real. The common thread in every case was what the researchers termed constructive delusion, the human ability to convince themselves so completely of something that reality bent to accommodate their belief. Other species saw this as a form of mental illness, but humans had weaponized it. They could collectively decide that the laws of physics didn't apply to them in a given situation, and for reasons that alien science couldn't explain, those laws would actually bend. What made this even more terrifying was the apparent randomness of when and how this ability manifested. Humans couldn't consciously control it. It seemed to activate only during moments of genuine crisis, when logical solutions had been exhausted. This meant that any conflict with humanity carried the risk of encountering something completely unpredictable, something that could invalidate every advantage technology and superior firepower might provide. The final paragraph of Dr. Morvain's report summarized the alien perspective perfectly. Humans don't just adapt to their environment, they force their environment to adapt to them. They are not a species that conquered their fears. They are a species that made their fears conquer everything else. And so here we are, 300 years after the galaxy discovered what makes humanity truly terrifying, still living in the shadow of our own forgotten potential. The aliens were right to fear us, but perhaps not for the reasons they think. Our greatest weapon isn't our technology or our numbers, or even our unpredictability. It's our absolute refusal to accept that anything is truly impossible. Every other species in the galaxy looks at the universe and sees limitations. They see laws that can't be broken, boundaries that can't be crossed, and problems that can't be solved. But humans, we look at those same limitations and ask, why not? We see the impossible and think, not yet. We encounter the unthinkable and respond with, watch me. The tragedy is that we've forgotten this about ourselves. We've become so focused on fitting in with galactic civilization that we've buried the very thing that makes us unique. We've traded our beautiful madness for logical thinking, our constructive delusion for scientific method, our reality-bending stubbornness for diplomatic cooperation. In trying to become more like them, we've become less like us. But the weapon is still there, sleeping beneath the surface of every human consciousness. It wakes up in moments of crisis, in acts of impossible heroism, in the quiet determination of someone who refuses to give up when everyone else has already surrendered. It's in the parent who moves mountains to save their child, the artist who captures souls with pigment and canvas, the scientist who looks at the impossible and says, "Let me try anyway." The aliens built their exclusion zones and wrote their protocols because they understood something that we've forgotten. Humanity's greatest strength has always been our greatest weakness turned inside out. We don't conquer through superior force. We conquer by refusing to believe we can be conquered. We don't solve problems through better technology. We solve them by deciding the problem doesn't get to win. Maybe it's time we remembered what made the galaxy afraid of us. Not so we can terrorize our neighbors or dominate other species, but so we can reclaim the part of ourselves that looks at the impossible and smiles. The part that built pyramids with primitive tools, cured diseases that had no cure, and walked on the moon because someone decided that the distance between Earth and space wasn't going to stop us. The galaxy fears us because we are the species, that weaponized hope itself. And that perhaps is the most human thing of all. So what do you think our forgotten weapon really was? Was it our ability to turn delusion into reality, our refusal to accept limitations, or something even stranger? Drop your theories in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about why humanity is the galaxy's most fascinating nightmare. Next week, we're diving into the classified files about what really happened during the Great Silence, and trust me, the truth is stranger than any fiction we could imagine.